Hey everybody, happy Saturday. Welcome to Escaping the Bar Chart. I'm Emery, and I'm so glad to be talking with you today. We're going to learn so much. So let me go ahead and share my screen. Harpreet, let me know when you can see it. We'll cross our fingers and hope that everything goes well. All right, you should see my Saturday afternoon sense of humor. The girl who is, she's literally behind bars. Okay, so we got to have some fun, right? We got to have some fun with this. Okay, so here is what we're going to do. Let me tell you a little bit more about me, and then we'll dive into some fun learning together. So I'm Anne Emery. I run Depict Data Studio. Here's my site if you want to check out the blog. I've been blogging almost a decade now, so I've got about 300 articles on there. My specialty is great data viz with everyday software. So you see a lot of blog posts on Excel or Sheets or even good old Microsoft Paint, Tableau Public, but especially Excel and PowerPoint and Word. I've worked with a lot of different groups. So I work with a lot of government agencies, federal, state, and local. I work with universities. I work with social change groups like foundations and nonprofits. And after today, the best way to stay in touch with me is probably on LinkedIn. So if you search for Anne K. Emery on LinkedIn, that's the platform that I use most often. Don't be afraid to reach out. I'm absolutely going to accept your friend request. I'm not going to be like, oh, who's this random person? No, let's all be friends. Let's all connect on LinkedIn. So connect with me there and I'll accept it and we can stay in touch. Okay, but first, what is wrong with bar charts? We're talking about escaping the bar chart for the next half an hour. So let me know in the chat window, what's wrong with bar charts? You're like, wait, Bart, I use those all the time and saying we have to escape them. What's wrong with them? I'd love to see all your ideas come in the chat window. And then in a moment, I'll have Harpreet read some of them off and we'll see what you come up with. And let me give you, spoiler alert, bar charts are not evil. There's nothing wrong with bar charts. Technically, they're a very accurate chart. They're going to be more accurate than things like pie charts or other charts we've seen. They just get a little old. They get so old. So when I look back at my work from years and years ago, I still have some actually on the shelf behind me. I have some of my old reports from way back when, before I knew better. And I look through those and they're like page 1, bar chart, page 2, column chart, page 3, the clustered chart with 2 bars or 3 bars next to each other, the stacked chart with the little stacks. So again, it's not that they're evil. They just, after a while, our poor audience, right? The poor readers of our reports and the poor audiences in our slideshows. Harpreet, did anybody type in the chat window with any ideas of like, what is wrong with bar charts?
I don't see anything yet, but let me say, like, there's so many charts that are out there. I think sometimes people get a little bit too creative with bar charts. I found myself in some situations where like it's really hard for me to convey my information that I'm trying to convey just with a few bars. Yeah, so somebody saying that there's definitely too many different types of bar charts out there. Somebody even said bar charts are the devil. I don't that's a bit extreme, man. I thought pie charts are the devil. But yeah, I think those are some of the common themes out there that people just, there's so many bar charts out there. They're commonly used. There's not much variety. People are using 3D with bar charts. Somebody even said four-dimensional bar chart. I don't know how that works. But yeah, some interesting stuff out there for sure.
Bar charts are not evil. They're just drafts. So they're a fine go-to chart when you're just getting started. But as you go back and edit your own work, let's add some more variety there. Okay, so today, gosh, I wish we had till midnight because I often teach about this in full day workshops. And I wish if we could hang out all day. I know you've got things to do though. I know you have things to do. I wish we could go over all these chart types. This isn't even every chart type known to humankind. These are just my favorites. So we are going to do what's called a choose your own adventure presentation today. And I'd like you to vote in the chat window. Which of these chart types do you want to cover? I think we have time for maybe 2, I've got some favorites though. So while you're typing, I'll see if I can sway you. I would love to cover exploratory charts. I'd love to even just open up Excel and give you an easy demo so you leave here with some quick wins. I'd love to teach you how to make heat tables, data bars, and Sparklines. So you've got that. You've got that under your belt. I really like the part to whole family. What did somebody say? Pie charts are the devil. We can use pie charts once in a while. We're just not going to use them all the time, so I can give you some guidance on when to use them, when not to, and the alternatives, what to use instead. And I really like the maps family because there's some issues with geographic maps that we have to pay attention to. And I want to show you some alternatives to those that can actually be a little bit more accurate and maybe even more interesting for our data. Okay, Harpreet, does anybody have votes of which chart types they want to cover today?
Still waiting on the responses for that, but a couple other things people are saying about bar charts. Somebody said they're lineal and prehistoric. I don't know. I don't know about that. Somebody says they're overused. Somebody says waterfall charts make sense. We're getting some good feedback here for exploratory charts, Sparklines, maps.
Let's do that then. Let's do exploratory and maps, and that'll be a great use of afternoon time together. Okay, I will tell you though, I am going to give you the chart chooser at the end, so don't feel like, oh no, I wondered what XYZ chart type was. Don't worry, I'll give you a free download at the end if you want to grab this yourself. Okay, so let's do exploratory first. So we'll fast forward to this section of the presentation, and I want to teach you about my 3 favorites. So I'll show you what they look like in their completed version. And then this will be a good test. If I can get the screen sharing right, we'll actually just go into Excel and I'll give you a quick demo. These are really easy to make. So, okay, so these are my 3 favorites. We've got Sparklines, miniature line charts, data bars, miniature bar charts, and heat tables or heat maps, like automatic color coding. This is what the final version would look like. So for Sparklines, aren't they nice? They're so helpful. These are for us. I think that's what I love about exploratory viz too, is yes, you could share this with somebody else. You could share it with your boss, your coworker, your audience, whoever you need to share this with. But really at their core, they're for us so that we can become really comfortable in our data set. Because when you open up a brand new data set, there's just a million numbers staring at you. Nothing really stands out. So these instant pictures really help us a lot. So we can make miniature lines. We can make miniature columns. There's also a third type in that grouping called win-loss, which is for positives and negatives, which sometimes we have in our data set, sometimes we don't. Okay, so that's the finished version of Sparklines. Data bars are horizontal bars, and they also live inside a cell. You can make them all positive, like that first column of purples you see. You can use them for positives and negatives, like the purples and the reds. You can use them with numbers or percentages. So lots of formatting options there. And then the third exploratory viz that I use all the time, in every spreadsheet, I use these for something, heat tables or heat maps. And this just means you're not clicking on each cell individually to color code it. Of course not. This is a small fictional data set. In real life, your data sets might have 100 entries. It might have 100,000 entries. You can't color code this by hand. So I'll show you right now, actually, a simple trick for doing this automatically. Let me know if anybody has done this before in Excel, if you've used Sparklines or data bars or heat tables. Maybe you've heard of them, but never used them. Let us know. Okay, so let's open up Excel. If I can drag it onto my right monitor, cross your fingers. Okay, great. Harpreet, can you see it? Okay, great. I'm going to zoom way in so everybody can see me. Even if you're watching on a phone today, I want you to be able to see me. And let's make up a fictional data set. This is going to be really fictional and boring. Let's just pretend we're comparing A, B, and C. And I don't know, let's just pretend we're looking at some patterns over time. And I'm going to use one of my favorite formulas, good old Rand between, to make up a super fake data set. I have to make up training data sets for my workshops all the time. And, honestly, this is how I do it a lot. Okay, so we've got some placeholder numbers in there that we can use. So the first one I'll show you is, let's see, I'll show you Sparklines first, okay? Sparklines are really easy. You just highlight the numbers that you want to visualize. So let's start with the first row. Then you go up to the Insert tab. You go past the regular charts. This is the whole regular chart section. These are the charts that are going to be pretty big. They're going to be 3 by 5 inches. These are the ones that get pasted into Word or pasted into PowerPoint later. We're not doing those. We're doing the quick exploratory charts. So you go to Insert, you go past the regular charts, and you go over to the Sparklines section. You have these on PCs. You have these on Macs. They've been around since Excel 2010. So we've had them for a decade in our software. Hopefully you're not on any prehistoric Excel from before then. If you are, buy yourself an upgrade. This feature is so fancy and so nice. Okay, so we highlighted our data. We went to Insert. Let's try Sparkline first. I click on that button and I get a pop-up window that looks a little bit scary at first. Really simple instructions though. It just says choose where you want the Sparklines to be placed. And I'm going to put them right off to the side. Good old column E, hit OK, and we get a little Sparkline. It looks kind of boring on this fictional data, but when you do it for your real data, oh, it's going to be so fun because you'll get to see, are the numbers going up? Are they going down? Do you have a zigzag pattern? Maybe everything kind of stayed flat and you got a huge up or a huge down, and then you get to pause and think about what might be leading to that change. What am I seeing in the data? Drag it down, fill it in. Those are Sparklines. Pretty easy, right? You can change these to vertical columns. Notice how my mouse still has these cells selected. That gives me the Sparkline tab on the top of my spreadsheet. And these are all the editing features that we have. So we can edit a lot on these, not everything, but we can edit a lot. So one thing you might want to do is change it from a line to a column. I like to compare both side by side and kind of compare which one's most useful. You could add little markers like color codings. You can change the colors. You can adjust the axes. Pretty cool. Okay, that's Sparklines. Let's do the next one, data bars. Okay, so Sparklines give you the vertical columns. Data bars give you the horizontal bars. Let's do this whole table all at once. I'll zoom way in so just to make sure you can really see this. Okay, data bars. They live on the Home tab under this button. This is Anne Emery's favorite Excel button, probably this button, conditional formatting and pivot tables. I'd say are my two favorite spreadsheet buttons. Okay, so we click on conditional formatting and we go to data bars. You are going to resist the urge to add a gradient fill. Don't do that. The tail fades out and it gets really hard to see, and that defeats the whole purpose of the bar, to be able to compare the lengths of the bars. So don't use these no matter how tempted you are. We're just going to do a solid fill. Feeling like, I don't know, green. Let's do green today. Why not? Those are data bars. And the last one is a heat table. Let me undo this because if you have, in real life, you're not going to do all three of these. You're going to probably just pick one. Otherwise, it get really busy. Okay, so we've got these cells highlighted. Heat tables are under Home. Conditional formatting, same place we just were. And we go to color scales. You can hover your mouse over these and get a quick preview of them. I'm going to tell you, though, a lot of these are not accessible. They are not red-green colorblind friendly. So I actually have a blog post rant about these and all of the features that Microsoft should really drop because they're not accessible. They shouldn't even be in here. I'm going to tell you that 9 times out of 10, you're going to want this option in the bottom left corner. 9 times out of 10, this green-white color scale is going to be the best bet for your data set. And that just means dark, big numbers are dark, really intuitive. The bigger the number, the more the color. In most data sets, that's what we want to emphasize. That's it. Do you want to talk maps for a few minutes? Let's do some maps. If you have any questions about conditional formatting, let me know, because when we have Q&A at the end, I'm happy to address this. I'm happy to talk more about exploratory techniques or talk about examples where I use this and so on. Okay. Let's see. Okay, let's fast forward to, let's do some maps. Okay. You've seen regular maps. You've seen a bunch of these. If you really want to impress people at a party or sound like a total nerd, you be the judge of that. You can call them Choropleth maps. And a Choropleth map, that just means color coded. It's like what we just talked about a moment ago with the color coding in the cells of the spreadsheet. This is the same color coding on a map. It means where there's more of something, where there's a higher number, it gets more color. So these maps are great because they're so intuitive. Everybody knows how to read these. I mean, of course, you'd have a legend, like if it's high or medium or low or what values correspond to each color, but people get these. The problem, though, is if you're making, you can make these for any geography. They're not just for US maps. You could do them by zip code, census tract, US state, Canadian province. You could do by country, looking at all the countries in Africa, for example. I'll show you an example of that at the end. No matter where you're looking at, you're going to have itty bitty tiny places, and you're going to have really big places. So on this map, do you see it's so small? It's like this big. Do you see Delaware on the far right? It's colored in really, really dark. We've got teeny places like Delaware. And then we've got huge places like Texas or Alaska. And Alaska's not even to scale on here. Alaska in real life is way, way, way bigger than this. Every place around the world has this. Little itty bitty places, really, really big places. So the problem is, no matter how dark we color in the little itty bitty places, they're always dwarfed by the bigger places. So our audience is having to do two things at once here. Our poor audience is having to look at color, light versus dark, and they're looking at size, acreage, land size, the actual land mass. And that's kind of a lot asking people's brains to do, to like somehow magically see Delaware, even though it's so small, and then make comparisons based on color, but not on size. So these could be a little misleading even. I know that's a strong word, misleading, but I've been to a lot of data viz conferences too, where professional cartographers debate these maps and say like, we should probably stop using these. But I've got some ideas for you instead. Okay, so one way to overcome this geography effect, this small, big geography effect, which actually has a formal name. In cartography, we call this the Alaska effect, because big places like Alaska always get visual prominence regardless of the color. Okay, so one way to overcome this is a square tile grid map, where every place is now the same shape and size. And our audience is freed up to only look at color. How nice. Except the drawback to these is now our audience has to look at like, why is my state not in the right place? I used to live in Virginia, and I always look at this and I'm like, why is VA? And it should be over here. So there's a little bit of a learning curve with these. I wouldn't use them for every single audience, but I want you to know how common they are. So the Urban Institute, for example, they use tile grid maps with line charts overlaid on top. The Washington Post uses tile grid maps with waffle charts, little tiny squares overlaid on top, to talk about things like overrepresentation and underrepresentation in the Electoral College. Child Trends uses tile grid maps with clustered bar charts on top. CNN uses them with arrows and color coding to talk about election forecasting. Even National Geographic uses them with smiley faces to talk about things like well-being scores and life satisfaction scores. So I show you all of these just to show you how normal they are, and you shouldn't be afraid to use tile grid maps. I think maybe 5 years ago when I kind of first saw these, I was like, wait, a square map? What will my audience think? They won't know how to read it. But these are becoming more and more normal. The general public's data viz literacy levels are going up and up and up. There is an issue with tile grid maps, though. So they overcome the Alaska effect, but the downside is they look a little bizarre. They totally look bizarre, especially this one. Doesn't it look so smushy? I feel like I want to stretch it out just a little bit to get better proportions. So the NPR team actually sat down. I linked to their blog post down below back in 2015. They sat down and they said, there's got to be a better way. What if instead of using squares, we use hexagons? And then we'll have, more power over where we arrange these hexagons. I love this sketch that they shared. I mean, they're literally drawing out of the back of a piece of scrap paper, kind of figuring out where the states should go so that the map looks really realistic. The finished version might look something like this. You can see it's a little bit truer to the true US map. If you really want to confuse people, you can use something called a cartogram, or I call these melty maps or Salvador Dali maps, or somebody saw this recently in a workshop. They saw Alaska and they said, oh, a splat map. This is where you're visualizing something other than land size, like you're visualizing the number of electoral votes, but not land, not acreage. I don't use these in practice. I find these really difficult for the typical audience to look at. Maybe if I was going to a cartography conference, only talking to cartographers in the audience who have tons and tons of map knowledge, I might use this. But I just want to show you that they exist. These have a purpose. Okay, so maps, to recap. Which one are we going to try? So we've got 3 real options. I'd say not the cartogram, probably not the melty map. Geographic or square or hex. So one consideration is the Alaska effect. The big places can dwarf the little places. So geographic's out, square and hex are in. Another consideration is we want the correct neighboring states to be next to each other. So Virginia, my old home state, is supposed to be next to like West Virginia, Maryland, and so on. The square map doesn't get this quite right. The hex map does a little bit better with that. So check, a vote for hex. We want our maps to have the correct southern tips. So another vote for hex maps there. We want Texas and Florida to be the true bottom of our map. We also want the notches for the Great Lakes. Yet another vote for hex maps for the win. And a final consideration would be the 4 corners of the country. We'd want to be in the correct spot. I think California looks a little funny on the square one. It's kind of falling off. So another vote for hex. I would stick with geographic maps. If your audience doesn't see a lot of maps, if they've like never looked at a map before in their life, I'd stick with those. Otherwise, I'd probably skip the square one and go right to hex if you want to try the tile grid variety. Other maps are in progress. So this is not just US centric. You can make these for any geography, local or national or worldwide. Here's one I found of waffle maps, waffles inside of Africa. We're out of time, so let me tell you how to get the chart chooser if you'd like to do a free download. You can just head over to my blog, depictdatastudio.com/chart-chooser, all one word. And when you click on download, you can get a free download with DataScienceGO. DataScienceGO. And then you can grab it, print it out, use it as a reference guide. Let's connect on LinkedIn. Hopefully you've already found my profile on there. I'm Ann K. Emery. And as we're reading through any questions that have come in, also, I would love to hear not just your questions, but let me know in the chat which chart type you will use after today. If you got any good ideas of things you might try, like maybe you'll try the Sparklines, the data bars, the heat tables, a hex map with the squares or hexagons. All right, let's see what types of questions came in for our remaining time together.
And thank you so much for that. That was really, really insightful. Like, I didn't even know there's that many types of charts to choose from. Coming from like an academic background, all I really use are like box plots and some bar plots and maybe distribution plots. So it was really cool to see this wide variety of different plots that we can use to communicate our message. So guys, if you guys have any questions, please do send us the questions through the chat and we'll get to them. We got a question here though from Sunny. Do you have any tutorials on your website as well?
I do. So if you head over to depictdatastudio.com, there's a search bar. And if you search for Excel, for example, you'll see lots and lots of Excel tutorials. So off the top of my head, I know we didn't talk about waffle charts, but you could check out a waffle chart. That's like a square pie chart. Population pyramids, those are super fun. That's like a back-to-back bar chart to show like two histograms kind of back to back. What else do I have on there? Tons and tons. There's about 300 blog posts on there. So yeah, just use the search terms to figure out what you're looking for.
Talking about waffles, man. Now you've got me hungry. So, like you mentioned, there's so many different types of charts that you can choose when presenting data, right? What are, like, as the person presenting the bar chart, what do you ask yourself in order to determine which type of chart family you should go to?
Yeah, probably one of the most important considerations, I'm so glad somebody asked this, is how many points in time you want to display. So on the chart chooser I showed, I'd say most of the first page and even part of the second one are for 1 point in time when you're just showing the most recent data, or it doesn't even have to be the most recent, but like one snapshot in time. Or do you want to show exactly 2 points in time? That would be what I call a before and after comparison. That's like, I used to work with a lot of research and evaluation projects. So before a grant versus after a grant, before a after school reading program and after fall test scores, spring test scores, before and after, that would be 2. Or do you have 3 or more points in time? Then you get into the whole line chart family. Sometimes people think there's just like a line chart. There's a lot of choices there. There's like timelines, calendars, all sorts of cool stuff. So that's probably the easiest starting point is, do you have 1 point in time or 2 points in time or 3 or more points in time? And that's going to really focus you pretty easily.
People are absolutely loving this. They've got so many questions coming in. Guys, keep the questions coming in. We got a question here from Robert, and he wants to know, which visuals do executives normally favor over others?
Not bar charts. It's like I know you know that. That's why you signed up to come to a session called Escaping the Bar Chart of all titles. So, gosh, executives, there's something to be said for novelty. There really is. I mean, people are they're so over the dashboard that has 20 charts with teeny tiny font and it's all like twisted sideways. So their brain has to do this somersault to like read diagonal text, and there's 20 different colors and they don't know where to look. Because the number crunchers, us, we're like, I don't know what's important. We were looking at this data set with hundreds of thousands of entries. How are we supposed to, like, that's very difficult to narrow things down. So there's something to be said for like fewer charts and more novel charts. I mean, we looked at tile grid maps with squares or hex maps with hexagons. If somebody's used to just seeing the same old map month after month in a dashboard and you show them little squares or little hexagons, they're literally gonna sit up straighter in their seat and they're gonna, oh wow, what is this? And they're gonna want to read it. So there's a big debate in the data viz community. It comes around like every year. People are like, should I use bar charts because they're so simple, or should I use some other type of chart because it's gonna attract attention and make people curious? And I would say like, let's use some different chart types and get people interested and excited about data again.
Yeah, there's always that bit of trade-off, right? Should we put everything in there? What should we take out? What should we keep in? So follow-up question here from Robert is simpler always better?
I think so. Feel free to disagree. You know what came to mind with that question was that quote. It's attributed to Albert Einstein. I bet you've all heard it. If you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. And I think about that every single day of my career. I think about, if I can't make a really easy chart that somebody gets, pretty quickly, do I not get it? Maybe I'm so far in the weeds of the project, because no projects make sense at first. You kind of have to go through all the mess in the middle of like data cleaning, and you look for outliers and you're merging all these data sets. There's a big messy middle, but at the end, the goal would be to come out the other side and have everything feel really clear to us, and then we can communicate that really clear. So yeah, I would say simple is always better. Where would complicated be better? I don't think so. I don't know. What's the opposite of simple? Like confusing? No, of course not.
So we got a question here from Adarsha. Adarsha wants to know, how do you decide which graph or chart to use for what type of data?
You can start with exploratory data viz. I always start with that. That's why it's called exploratory, because we're exploring our data set. We're just seeing where might there be patterns, because at first your data set's going to be all black and white, all numbers, percentages, dates, text. It's just blah, like so much blah. So start with exploratory viz. And then this is difficult for us technical people. You have to trust your gut instinct a little bit. You have to think like, what stands out to me? Because if it's interesting to you, it's going to be interesting to your audience too. So you're asking yourself questions like, is this the same thing that I expected to see? Is this different from what I expected to see? Why is it the same? Why is it different? Did things increase over time or not? So you're just kind of like following your own curiosity and starting with exploratory. And then after that, that's why I made the 2-page chart chooser for you. You can kind of, zoom in on different families of charts depending on what you want to show. Like, do you want to show geography? Of course, you're going to have a map then. Do you want to show 2 points in time? You're going to use the before and after family. Do you want to use 3 or more points in time? You're going to use that line chart family. So it takes some practice, but I promise you're going to come out the other end. It's going to feel really easy.
Yeah. And when we're making like these visualizations, do you think it's important for us to at least speak with our stakeholders to see what they think is important rather than us trying to intuit what might be important?
Yes. I don't even know if I have to elaborate there. Yes, absolutely. Get input early and often, of course.
So you personally, what's the biggest visualization mistake that you've made in your career? What was that all about?
Cramming everything in. That's an easy one. Everything. I used to cram everything in. I come from an academic background though. Like we all come from some sort of academic background, but I was like pretty academic for a while because I did my bachelor's degree. I thought I was going to do the PhD route and go be a professor. So I worked in a university research center, churning out peer-reviewed journal articles on NIH-funded studies. And it was like in SPSS and SAT. I don't know if anybody uses those software packages anymore, but I was like in the data. So even when I left academia to go work in consulting and go work with foundations and nonprofits, I still had that mindset of like, I got to show all the data. I have to show all of it or else, I don't know, what was I afraid of? Maybe people wouldn't think I was smart. Maybe, there's a little ego thing I see among a lot of us. Maybe they would have questions and like they wouldn't think that I did my job well enough. I was always just so afraid, like, what if people don't have everything they need? What if? So I come up with these 100-page reports. And now I realize even really smart people, even highly educated people, even hardworking people, they're so busy and they just don't have the time to go through all that data. So that's the value that I can bring to the project and that, all of us can bring to the project is just really filtering down and focusing on a few key findings. I learned that lesson way too late, unfortunately.
And thank you so much for that. So one more time, can you shout out where we can go and get that chart chooser and what was that code that was associated with it again?
Yeah, it's depictdatastudio.com. That's my company where my team and I, we do our thing, /chart chooser, and click on the download button. Don't enter your credit card info. I made a coupon code for you. I made a really hard coupon code. It's DataScienceGO. That's it. Not DSGO. DataScienceGO.
And thank you so much. I really enjoyed that presentation. I sure did learn a lot, and I can't wait to start doing some awesome visuals with your chart chooser. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Harpreet. Bye.